So I just want to say good evening to everyone. My name is Debbie Singizer, and I am the Director of Board Services at the Vermont School Boards Association. I want to thank you all very much for joining us for tonight's webinar, Get on Board Candidate Training. Before we begin, I just want to go over a couple of logistics for the evening. Questions are highly encouraged. After all, that's why we're here. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A box. We're not going to be using the chat box this evening, but we're asking participants to please type their question in the Q&A box. That way, nobody will see your question, only the presenters will. Following the webinar, if you have some additional questions, you're always welcome to reach out to me by email, and I'm happy to answer the question or pass it along to the appropriate individual who can answer it for you. At the end of the webinar, when you log off, a 3-question evaluation or survey is going to pop up automatically. And we ask that you take the survey. It literally takes about 2 minutes to answer the 3 questions. And we ask our participants to do this in every webinar because it gives us great information for how we can make the webinar even better the next time we do it. As you know, this webinar is being recorded, and after this evening, you'll be receiving an email with a link to the recording, the slide deck that you'll see, as well as any handouts that we reference during the evening. We will also be putting the recording up on our website, on our webpage called Get On Board, which you can find underneath the resources tab on our website. If you were to go to that page tonight, you would actually see the recording from last year's webinar. So after tonight, it'll be replaced by the recording for tonight's webinar. While you're on that page, the Get On Board page, I invite you to check out all the resources and information about how to run for school board. Tonight is just one piece of a larger campaign, Get On Board, that the VSBA will continue to run until town meeting day in March. So that does it for me for now. And I would like to introduce to you Sue Siglowski, the Executive Director of the Vermont School Boards Association. Sue will tell us a little bit about herself and help get us started for the evening. So Sue.
Thank you very much, Debbie, and thank you to those of you who have joined us this evening. I'm really delighted that you are interested in running for school board. We are always looking for informed and dedicated people to serve. Prior to joining the Vermont School Boards Association, I myself was a school board member for 13 years. I served on the Meadowy and Paulet school boards, as well as the board of the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union. I grew up in the small town of Rupert, Vermont, where I began my education in a one-room schoolhouse, believe it or not, and that building is now the town library. I am a third-generation school board member. My father and grandfather were both school board members, and the opportunity to serve my community in this way was something that I always wanted to do. I enjoyed being the bridge between the community and the schools. During my time serving as a school board member, I came to realize how important public education is to building strong communities and a healthy democracy. So this evening, this is how our webinar will go. First, I'm going to provide you with some information about what school board service is, and should you decide to run, what you need to do. Second, we'll have a panel composed of 4, or is it 3, possibly 3 or 4 current board members who will speak about their own experiences serving on their respective boards. Third, we will provide you with a brief overview of how the Vermont School Boards Association supports board members. And fourth, we will leave some time at the end for any remaining questions. We're scheduled to end at 7 o'clock, but are willing to stay a bit longer if there are more questions. Now let's take a look at the role of the school board. We use the term governance a lot when discussing school board work, so let's take a minute to define what governance is. As you can see from these definitions, governance is a higher level function. To govern means to steer or set the direction. In our case, when talking about education, the board is responsible for steering the school district toward its vision, a vision that is written and reflects the thinking of the whole community, something we will get to in just a minute. By governing well, a board helps the district to stay true to its mission, to honor its purpose, and to answer the most critical of questions. Why? As in, why do we exist? For example, why does the Washington Central Unified Union School District exist? What is its purpose? Effective boards focus on governance. They leave the management or day-to-day operations of the district to the superintendent. So in terms of roles and responsibilities in the district, boards are responsible for the governance of the district. Superintendent is responsible for the management of it. Another way to think of this distinction is that boards assure schools are well run, but they do not run them. Should you be elected, you will see this again. The VSBA spends time going over the difference between governance and management and the respective roles and responsibilities of the board and the superintendent during the training we do with new board members each spring. So we will leave it there for now. In its role, the board acts as a trustee on behalf of the community to provide oversight of public education in the district. Its job is to ensure that three things happen. First, that every student in the district receives a high-quality education. Second, that the taxpayers get a good return on their investment. And third, that the district operates efficiently, effectively, and ethically, which is important for many reasons, not least of which is that it builds trust between the board and the community. So the next logical question is, how does a board ensure these three things happen, keeping in mind its governance role? At the VSBA, we developed a way to help organize the governance work of school boards according to categories, as you see here. All 6 of these categories, or pillars as we often call them, are equally important to the success of a school district in achieving its goals. Let's take a look at each pillar briefly. Again, keeping in mind that a deeper dive will happen during your orientation after you've been elected. This orientation will be done by the board chair and superintendent, and also the VSBA offers 2 virtual sessions created specifically for newly elected board members in the spring, which we encourage you to attend. As you can see here, the first pillar is engage the community and establish a vision. The board is in the strongest position whenever it is engaged with the community. The board should develop a structured and ongoing opportunities for the community to define and refine the vision for the school district. And once that vision is in place, the board then takes on the responsibility for monitoring progress and making policy and budgetary decisions to achieve the vision. To keep the community engaged in the ongoing work of the district, including both successes and challenges, the board must seek ways to interact with the community stakeholders in a variety of settings and contexts. One of the most obvious times community engagement happens every year is around budget season, specifically at the annual district meeting when the board presents the new budget for the following fiscal year to the registered voters. However, community engagement really should be happening 12 months out of the year. Again, the board is in its strongest position whenever it is engaged with the community. The second pillar of essential school board work is policy. Of the 32 specific duties delegated to local boards by the General Assembly, the very first responsibility on that list is the duty to determine the education policies of the school district. The development and maintenance of school district policies is the central job of a school board. The board must ensure the district not only achieves educational results for students, but does so in a manner that complies with legal requirements and meets community expectations. The board does this by setting policies that are aligned with the values and concerns of the community on whose behalf the board serves. Remember, this idea of trusteeship, the school board acts as trustees on behalf of the community. Once the board has spoken in policy, it delegates to the administration the authority to further interpret the policy, which is often done through written procedures. The board then regularly monitors for policy compliance. If it is important enough to be addressed in policy, then it must be monitored. One of the things new board members should do is familiarize themselves with all of the district policies. Moving on, the third pillar is board and superintendent partnership. Perhaps the most important decision a board makes is to hire a qualified superintendent to lead and manage education in the district or supervisory union. Remember, boards provide oversight. They do not manage day-to-day operations of the school system. Vermont law designates the superintendent as the chief executive officer for the supervisory union or supervisory district. As the CEO, the superintendent is accountable for the operations of the entire school system. The board and superintendent relationship is pivotal to the success of a school district. It matters for many reasons. Perhaps most importantly, it matters to student achievement. Studies have shown that in districts with high student achievement, one of the primary characteristics of the school board was a good working relationship with the superintendent. Ideally, we want this relationship to be a partnership, one that is based on mutual respect and trust, and for the board and superintendent to act as a united team, one where they work together collaboratively. Here is a breakdown of the roles of the board, the superintendent, and the principal. Clarity of the roles is very important to the success of a district. The different parties need to understand their respective roles so they can do the job that is expected of them and stay out of each other's lanes. The Vermont Agency of Education has a handout that delineates in greater detail the roles and responsibilities in Vermont school systems, from the board level to the superintendents to principals to teachers. The link to this document is at the bottom of this slide. I would suggest you take a look at it when you have some time. The fourth pillar is develop a budget and assure financial oversight. Boards have two important roles here. First, assuring the education system has adequate resources to achieve its mission. And second, providing high-level financial oversight to assure that the resources are properly managed on behalf of the taxpayers. The board has 6 major responsibilities related to the finances of the district, which are covered in detail during the training VSBA does in the spring with newly elected board members. For our purposes today, this is what is important to keep in mind: that a budget should show the values of the school district as they have been articulated before. Remember that community engagement work that I spoke about earlier? That is where a board needs to really understand from its community members what is important to them in terms of public education. This will help so much during the budget season when tough decisions have to be made in terms of what to keep and what to cut. The fifth pillar is monitor progress. The board is accountable to the community to ensure the district is making reasonable progress in achieving outcomes for students and that the system is operating in compliance with all policies, laws, and regulations. To meet this obligation, the board needs to regularly monitor both areas. Monitoring is key to ensuring fidelity to the district's vision and goals. This is a list of some of the monitoring tasks a board should undertake on a regular and scheduled basis. Finally, the sixth and last pillar, effective and ethical operations. As elected officials, school board members must act with integrity and adhere to the highest ethical standards. Ethical and effective operations are crucial to a strong school board. Effective operations are characterized by board members who are clear that they have no legal authority apart from the board. Boards that assure that schools are well run, but do not try to run them. Board members who avoid actual and perceived conflicts of interest. And board members who maintain confidentiality of executive session. A board meeting is where board work is done. It is a public meeting, but not a meeting of the public, an important distinction to note. The dates of regular board meetings are agreed to by the board during its reorganizational meeting in the spring. Meetings are publicly warned and must comply with other provisions in the open meeting law. Boards are required to use Robert's Rules of Order to conduct their business. These are covered during a board member's orientation, and the VSBA offers training on these two topics, open meeting law and Robert's Rules. And that's it. In a nutshell, those are the 6 main categories or pillars of school board's essential work. Should you become a school board member, you will learn more about each of these and how to become an effective board member who uses good governance. So, are you ready to run? If you decide to run, and we hope that you do, here is what you need to know. First, let's go over the eligibility requirements. These are enumerated in Vermont state statute. First, you must be a legal voter in the school district that you want to serve. This is in 16 Vermont statutes annotated, section 558. You are not eligible to hold the office if one of these stipulations listed here is true. Note the asterisks at the bottom of the slide because there are exceptions to these. If you have any questions about your own situation and whether you meet these eligibility requirements, the best thing to do is contact the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office. Note, there are 2 ways to become a candidate, and it depends on how your school district conducts elections. For those that use the Australian ballot, there are steps that must be followed. Step 1, these forms can be downloaded from the Secretary of State's website at the address given on the slide. Step 2, fill out the consent of candidate form. Step 3, pay attention to the seat you are running for, because the number of signatures required for the petition is tied to the position, a District 1 or at large one. Tip, get a couple of extra signatures just in case some of the signatures you collect are invalid for one reason or another. Always a good idea to get a couple extra. Submitting. The filing deadline for petitions of nomination and the consent of candidate form is the 6th Monday preceding the day of the election, no later than 5 p.m., which this year is Monday, January 27th. Don't be late in submitting because no exceptions are made. However, you may also launch a write-in campaign if the date for submitting petitions has passed. Also note that school districts with charters may have different petition requirements, so it's important to check with your central office on these. If you have questions about how your district conducts elections, the central office, specifically the administrative assistant to the superintendent, is a great resource. These staff are very aware of open seats and knowledgeable about the election process. Town clerks are often also a helpful resource. If your district does not use Australian ballot, it is a much simpler process. As you can see here, you will be elected from the floor at town meeting. Now, the exciting part, onto our panel. We are very fortunate to have with us this evening. We have 3, right, Debbie? 3 school board members?
We only have 3. Yep.
Okay, yes. So we have 3 school board members from around the state with a lot of experience to share with us. Let me introduce them to you first, and then each person will present for about 5 minutes. We have asked them to touch on a few topics, including first, their length of service. Second, why they initially decided to run for school board. Third, is serving on the school board the same or different from what they expected? Fourth, what has pleasantly surprised them about school board service? And fifth, if someone is interested in learning more about their local school board, what their local school board does, what would they suggest that individual do to learn more? So now let me introduce you to our panelists in the order they will be speaking. First, we have Jack McCarthy, a member of the Maple Run Unified School District Board. And after Jack, we're going to hear from Nancy Russell from the Hartford School District. And after Nancy will be Laura Williams, a member of the South Burlington School District Board. In addition to serving on their local school boards, Jack, Nancy, and Laura are also Vermont School Boards Association board members. They were elected by other board members in their regions to serve on the VSBA board. We're very lucky to have them as part of the VSBA team. As a reminder, please type in your questions for the panelists into the Q&A box. We will take the questions after all the speakers have presented. If you'd like to direct your question to one of the speakers, indicate which one. Jack, I'm going to hand it over to you to get us started.
Okay, so Sue, do I answer all the questions in order or just one at a time?
You can just do a free-flowing answer, all of them, unless you need me to remind you what they are.
I don't have them in front of me, but I will do my best. And if I forget one of them, just let me know.
Okay.
So my name is Jack McCarthy. I have a different situation, as I was a 50-year educator who retired. And the reason I joined the school board is I had a hard time retiring and I wanted to stay involved. And the local superintendent at the time had an opening and asked me if I would run and fill that opening. And I was excited to do that because as I said, I wanted to get back into education, but not have the responsibility of the superintendent. So I've been a board member now for about a little over 7 years. And I serve the Maple Run School District, which includes St. Albans City, St. Albans Town, Fairfield, and Collins Pearly Sports Center, and the Northwest Technical Center. What I found different than what I expected is when I was superintendent, I had to worry about what every single board member was going to say, whatever. As a board member, I just have to worry about myself. Now, I listen to all the others and I respect all the others, but I don't have the responsibility that the superintendent has. So it's a lot less attention for me because I can speak my mind and do my thing, and I'm not really responsible for everybody else. I happen to be on a board where we all trust each other. It's a very nice board. When I was superintendent, I had 6 boards because it was a supervisory union, whereas Maple Run is the consolidated school system, and we have one board for all of the schools and buildings and so forth. So because I had so many boards, I had a few colorful board members that were kind of interesting and at times would go off the deep end and maybe violate some of those issues that Sue outlined for us as the roles and responsibilities. But the Maple Run board is a very, very hardworking, nice board. We all agree with each other. Haven't really seen any major tension, whatever. So for me, it's a lot of fun. So I really wasn't expecting it to be so much fun, but it is. Is it a responsibility? Yes. And there are other little things that we do besides just the board meetings. We have policy meetings. We have educational sessions where we learn things. And even though I was in education for 50 years, I have a lot to learn every time. Because things are changing. I was a superintendent 10 years ago. In the last 10 years, there are many things that have changed. Now, Sue, have I forgotten anything that I was supposed to comment on?
The only thing that you haven't commented on is if someone's interested in learning more about what their local school board does, what would you suggest that they do?
I think one of the best things to do is, for the most part, show up at meetings because meetings are open. They're open to the public. I've noticed that people that are interested in being on the board start coming to board meetings, and you kind of learn whether you would like to work with these people or not. And you learn how the board functions. You learn how a board meeting goes. We're fortunate that we pretty much stick to the timeline. We go 6 to 8, and it's almost always ending a little bit before 8 or maybe a few minutes after, but it's pretty close. Every once in a while, we have a topic where we have to go into executive session, which means everybody who's not on the board and not the superintendent, whatever, has to leave the room. And we discuss some legal issue or some topic that's allowed in executive session, where we leave the open meeting session. But for the most part, boards shouldn't really go over their timeline, because I've had boards in the past where they just keep talking and talking and talking till 10 o'clock at night. And that wears out a school board. But the Maple Run sticks to the 2-hour limit. And we have 2 meetings a month, but we only are there for 2 hours at each meeting. And I think that's very important. But another thing you can do if you can't come physically to every meeting is you're trying to learn what a board meeting is like. Now that we have Zoom and a virtual way of getting connected, do that. But I think there are ways that you can learn what you're going to be getting into if you really decide to run. But I encourage it because it's a lot of fun, it's interesting, and it serves your community.
Thank you very much, Jack. We're going to hear from Nancy next. Nancy, go ahead.
Unmute myself. Hi, I'm Nancy Russell, and I live in White River Junction, Vermont, and I serve on the Hartford School Board District, which serves the 5 villages of Hartford. I currently have been on my local board for 8 years, and I'm up for election in 27, so I still got a few more to go. My past experience before I went on the board was I worked in the early ed for 20 plus years. I also serve as Sue said on the VSBA board on numerous committees there. I am also now I think very fortunate to serve on the National School Board Eastern Region's Beliefs and Resolutions Committee, which I may not go in the order that Sue asked for the questions, but what that brings to my mind is what was surprising to me and how being on my local school board was different than what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be that gung-ho person, and then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change this and I'm going to change that. And I quickly learned that it is definitely a team effort. And there are things that we can change if need be, and there's things that it's not in our purview to change, and you have to accept that and go on with it. I have always believed in service to my community, and that was one of the reasons that I wanted to run for school board. I had been serving on the Vermont State, the Prevent Child Abuse board for 17 years, and people kept saying, you need to run for your school board, you need to run for your school board. So I did, and surprisingly to myself, was elected. And I have enjoyed every minute I'm with Jack. I think it's tons of fun. There's lots of opportunities to learn and to take care of some situations that probably happen in a lot of school districts and just really aren't talked about so much, but it gives us a great opportunity to work together, to work with our community, work with our legislators. So I do enjoy that part. I like giving back to my community. I have such a dedication to the students. Those are my very first, that's my passion for being on this board. It's given me a great opportunity. If in the state of Vermont, there's a statute that if you serve on a local school board, that you cannot work in that school district. But because of, from COVID on, there's been so drastic opportunities for people to come in and work as substitutes, whether you're on the board or not, and you can get an exemption from the Agency of Education. Is what I've done. So I've now been working as a substitute in the middle school. And the interesting part for me, not only to work with these great kids, is some of the questions that they come to me with about the school board. Well, why didn't you blah, 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 blah? Or really, are we going to get to do this? So I think it's been a great education for them and hopefully for their parents and the other people in the community. One of the other things that I found that I didn't realize when I first ran was the time commitment. Because as we all know who have served on school boards, it is a time commitment. And I think that everybody that I have ever known that's run on a school board now, that I've listed in that group of people, loved every minute of it. It didn't matter the time commitment. It was there. They enjoyed it. And for me personally has been the opportunity to serve on the VSBA and to serve on this Eastern Regions Committee for the National School Board Association. And the knowledge that I have learned. We've got trainings out the wazoo from the State School Board Association, and they're free, and they can be recorded, and you can go back and read them. We've got archives that you can just pick a subject and look through our archives, and 10 to 1, you're going to find a webinar that you can go back and look at. Sue is very gracious, and as all of the staff at the VSBAs, to answer any questions that you have or any concerns, and to give you advice on maybe a problem that you might be having or how to better handle something that if you've not served on boards before, that you probably not encountered. But again, it's a challenge that's good for you. It's good for your community. It's good for your families. I've got 5 grandchildren that have gone through the Hartford School District. The youngest one is finally in the high school. And I've had the great pleasure of watching them and actually handing them the diplomas, because I'm serving on the school board, and I get to hand my grandchildren their diplomas. And so I've got to hand every single one of them that. And I think that is, for me, that was outstanding. And it was all because I was serving on a school board and trying to make changes that needed to be made, advocating for the students, for the staff at the schools, for the families. I think that's about it. Did I ramble on long enough, Sue? Did I get them all?
I think you covered everything, Nancy, and it's really great to hear how rewarding both you and Jack find school board service.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to Laura.
Thank you, and thank you to Jack and Nancy. You actually probably covered covered it all. I serve on the South Burlington School District School Board. I'm also a teacher at Essex Westward School District, and let's see, it's been just over 2 years now. I was appointed because there was a vacancy, so I've been through one election, and now the next one is coming up. And I decided to be a school board member. Nancy and Jack touched on a lot of it. I've been a teacher for almost 30 years, and my children went through this district, and I did want to serve my own community, and I wanted to see, kind of from the other side, how does a school district run? And I do believe strongly in public education. I've devoted my life to it. So, day and I'm up at 5, and then so going to those board meetings that sometimes I like that. Yeah, our meetings run 2 to 3 hours, so it's a long day, but it is a rewarding day. I cannot believe what I have learned in such a short amount of time. And is it same or different than what I thought it would be? Now that I've been on the board 2 years, now it's kind of what I thought it would be. There is a huge learning curve, but it's good. As Nancy said, it's good for you. The VSBA was so helpful. I know, Sue, you got on the phone with me more than once, Phil Gore. So I had all these questions that everybody answered. So it wasn't a scary learning curve. It just was it was just a lot of learning. And I even asking all those questions and being unsure, I did feel valued and supported by my own community and the VSBA. So, you can't know what you don't know, but you'll know it. You'll learn it. So that did surprise me. Because I kind of thought I would be on my own trying to figure this out, but that is so not the case. My superintendent is super helpful, and VSBA and my fellow board members. And yeah, I think maybe what has pleasantly surprised me, the strong connections I've had on the school board. I didn't really anticipate that. We are starting to gel. That's been really great. I just really didn't know how that was going to go at the beginning, and I've gotten to know my community better. That's been huge. And even my local, we have 5 representatives. They come to our meetings, they ask our opinions. It feels like a real partnership. It's no secret that education funding is a struggle, and our budgets are challenging this year. So it's so great to have our reps come. I mean, they really do want to help, and they'll even answer questions that we can't. That has been great. So I've learned a lot, and I've gotten to know them as well. So I feel a lot more connected to the community. And yeah, if someone is interested, I think both Jack and Nancy said it, definitely come to a meeting. That would be great. And also all of our emails, if you go on any school board website, all of our emails are there, and any one of us, I'm speaking for everybody, but I think we'd be all happy, to talk, like email or meet for coffee. I've met at least 2 people for coffee to talk about if they should run. And one person did run, and she was elected, and another woman decided that the time commitment was too much, just given where her life was, but she would have been great too. So yeah, definitely go to a meeting, definitely, contact a school board member, invite them out for coffee, or just to take a walk and talk. That's one of the great ways to do it. And my town clerk has been great, with helping with the forms and the signatures and all of that, being very, definitely I always get about 5 to 10 more signatures than I need because I'm paranoid. So I think that's what I have, Sue, unless I'm looking at them right now. I think I touched upon them all.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Laura, very much. And we
Yeah.
really enjoyed hearing your perspective and also the perspectives of Jack and Nancy. Debbie, do we have any questions before we move on?
There are no questions right now in the Q&A box, but we'll just pause here for a minute to see if somebody wants to type in a question. Um, I guess I could start the question and answer by asking a question that I've received by people who are thinking of running for school board. One thing that they have said to me is they're concerned that they're not good with numbers and not good at looking at budgets. And so, as board members, what would you say to somebody who is concerned that that's not one of their strengths? Could they still be an effective school board member?
Oh, go ahead.
Nancy,
Who wants
did you
to
have your
jump in?
hand?
I'll jump in because
Okay, great, because I'm happy to as well.
although I have owned numerous businesses, but I've always had an attorney and accountant to do all that work for me. So, okay, they could give me the rundown and yeah, okay, yeah, you got this, you got this. So when I came onto the school board, I really had to learn about budgets. And let's face it, school budgets are different than a business budget in a lot of different ways, unless you have a business larger than any of mine were. And but one of our school board members was fantastic with numbers. He's an accountant. He owns his own business. He puts it down into good old layman's terms so you could understand exactly what that meant and what it meant when we had to change different things or take something out of the budget and add something else to the budget. So that was my experience with if you don't think you can do it just because of that, you can.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, there's people out there that are more than willing to help you. Plus, VSB has webinar on budgeting, and
Mhm.
I ask people from VSBA also questions about budgeting. So there's lots of help out there. You don't have to be a CPA to be able to understand it.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say that I think women tend to doubt themselves
Yeah.
in way and don't question yourself, don't second guess. You can totally do it. And that's one thing that I've learned. No, I'm a Spanish teacher, so no, I don't numbers. I don't. That's not my job on a daily basis. But their superintendent definitely knows. I certainly understand the school's mission and what's important to the district, and that's really critical. And then there's a chief financial officer. There are paid people on staff who are in charge of understanding those numbers. And as Nancy said, they'll break them down into layman's terms. So I think what's really important is understanding the school's mission and what's best for the children. And then we can guide, then you can guide the budget from there. So that's what I would say.
Great.
So what I would add to that is, whenever you have a team, you have people that are really talented at one area or another. And so I wouldn't be nervous about if crunching numbers is not your forte. That's not a big deal, because what the voters actually vote on is the bottom line number. How you get to that number is complicated, and some people understand it better than others. Now, what I've learned, even though I was a superintendent for 15 years and had to prepare budgets all the time, in the last 10 years, I have a theory that the legislature, and my son was in the legislature, but the formula for school budgets is so complicated. I don't know if anybody really understands it. And I think I have a little theory that it's so complicated that nobody understands it. But what the voters vote on is the bottom line. The 47 million or 65 million or whatever the budget is for your school system. That's what they're voting on. And how you get there is complicated. But for our particular board, the superintendent has educational sessions and we go over it over and over and over. And then he sends us out to different community groups to ask questions and answer questions mainly. And, you know, it's a good way to learn. And most people eventually get the gist of it. They may not know every particular thing, but they get the idea that, you know, there's only 15% of the budget that's discretionary. 85% of it is your contracted negotiations and your contracts with the support staff and the teachers and whatever. And health benefits come in with a certain percentage. You can't change that. You're stuck with it. And then utilities for all the buildings. So you have salaries, health benefits, utilities that are just there, and you're a victim of them. and and you know, the discretionary things are you know, things like some of the purchases you make for other educational items that the teachers need and want and so forth. But it's very difficult. There are people who get on a school board because I'm going to change that budget. And then when they get in, you start talking about it, they go, oh, I didn't realize how complicated it was. So it's not as easy as people think. Or if you want to join a school board because your kid didn't make first string in baseball, that's not
Yep.
why to be a board member. Single issues are not the real reason you should be a board member. You should be a board member for all kids, for all staff, and the good of the community. And
Yeah, Jack, that's a good point, Jack. Sorry to interrupt, but that one of the things about being an elected school board member that makes it different from other elected positions is that you're not a single person. You are working as a team.
right.
And so that is that's what I really like about it. So it's yes, and the other thing I say to people, it's okay not to understand. There's a semester-long course at St. Michael's that Dan French used to teach about explaining it. It's a semester long. I need to make that clear. That is a long time, and so it is very complicated. I dare say that many of our legislators do not understand it. So it is you know it, but it's you understand enough. And again, as Jack just said, there's a lot of it you don't have control over. I mean, local control, I hesitate to say percentage, but it's a lot lower than that. Also really surprised me. I thought, wow, the state really does make all these decisions. So it's, you know, and then right, as you say, 85% is your staff, and again, your superintendent, as Jack also said, we'll present this budget. You'll hear this budget 25 times. So at some point, bits and pieces will start to make sense.
I'm going to hop in here because we have a couple questions that popped in, which I know you are all able to answer. I think the first one, Sue, you might be the best one to answer. Somebody wanted to know, how do we know if our school board uses the Australian ballot method or not? Or I guess our school district. How would somebody find out that? Do you know?
Probably the best way to find out about that is to contact the town clerk.
Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah, I would just call the town clerk and find out how they do the elections, if it's Australian ballot or from the floor. Yep. And also, here's a question for the panel, our board members. On average, how much time do you spend a week on school board activities? That's a really good question. What would you say?
It depends a lot on what other things that you have, because when somebody asks me how much time do I spend on the school board, I'm taking in the local school board and VSBA and so I spend anywhere between 10 and 20 hours a week, but that's just me. And a lot of that is doing research, reading white papers, talking to the superintendent of the schools about certain things, going to my chair and talking with them. So I think it really depends on the person. I don't think there is for me, I don't see that there is a given that, oh, you're going to spend 5 hours a week or 5 hours a month or whatever. And as Jack says, it depends upon how long your school board meeting lasts.
So I would say to answer that, you have the school board meetings. And if you have one a month or two a month, then, that's your commitment. But there are also committees, and you can get on a committee or you can not. So it's up to you. I'm chair of the negotiations, and that takes some time. But we meet like once or twice a month for about 3 or 4 months before we get to either it goes into impasse, and negotiating. There are legal steps that are established in statute, and you have to bargain in good faith. You have to do certain things. So if you're on that committee, and there are 3 of us in our supervisory, or it's not a supervisory union, but it's a district now. We have 3 of us that are involved in the negotiations, and that's a committee, and we've volunteered to do that. You don't have to do that. Then there's policy committees, and sometimes there are student affairs, like if there's an expulsion hearing coming up or whatever, there are a few board members that are involved in that committee. So and the superintendent kind of regulates that and gets volunteers from the board to do that. But it's really up to you if you want to be involved and you want to go to the regular meetings and then be on a committee. And I would say that you should volunteer to be on some committee, because you learn behind the scenes what makes up policies, or what makes up budget, or what makes up negotiating, whatever you learn from that. So it is a time commitment, but it's not outrageous.
Yeah, I would say I have spent anywhere from 3 to 10 hours a week, and that's just averaging out. That includes the meetings, that includes phone calls to other school board members. I count reading email from VSBA. I try to stay up to date. And, I am a teacher. There are just times where I cannot do it. And then there are other times where, I volunteer to have listening sessions. So then it's a little bit more of a time commitment. Negotiations, I recuse myself from negotiations. So it really, you can pick and choose what you want to do. And it does work out. It does work out. And if you are overwhelmed with your day job, you just say, I can't do it this week. And I've never had anybody not take over when someone's feeling overwhelmed. Right. So don't let that stop you either.
Also in that question, there was another question that asked about what is the term of service? Is it all the same, Sue, across the state in terms of how many years a board member is elected to, or is it district by district?
It's typically 3 years. Sometimes when a district first gets formed, there'll be different years, different terms of different numbers of years in order to get them staggered. Mm-hmm. But typically it's 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a small board. We have 5 members. 2 of us are on 3-year terms, and the other 3 are on 2-year terms. And it's for that very reason that Sue said. So we don't have a whole new board starting
right
at one time.
Great.
Ours is the same. Yeah.
And a question of clarification, you have to run in the town that you live in, right? Not that you work in. Sue?
Yes, it has to be where you are a registered voter.
Okay, great. All right, well, that does it for questions. I'm going to we have one more slide to show tonight, and let me get back into and then we're going to let everybody go about their evening. But before we do, I'm going to ask Sue to cover this slide right here about what the VSBA does and how we can help.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I wanted to share very briefly with you how the VSBA supports school board members, new ones and veterans alike. We have a hardworking team of 5 that is ready to provide you with these services that you see here on this slide. We work with individual boards providing customized support such as training and workshops, as well as support to all boards in the form of our monthly webinars, our annual conference, and a number of consultation services that are listed here on this slide. VSBA is a membership organization, and we exist to serve our members however we can. We look forward to getting to know those of you on this webinar, hopefully in the future. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to all who joined us tonight to learn more about school board service. Now I'm going to hand it back to Debbie to close us out for the evening.
Thanks. Thanks, Sue. And thank you to our panelists, Nancy, Jack, and Laura. You guys are fabulous. I really appreciate you giving us your time this evening, and we appreciate all of you. For anybody who's still on the webinar, if you have additional questions after we end this evening, please, here's the contact information, my contact information in front of you. Don't hesitate to reach out to me with any question or concern that you might have. And as I said earlier, I'm happy to answer the question. And if I'm not able to, I'll direct it to the right person. Please don't forget that very important deadline of January 27th,
Yes.
Monday, in case if you are in an Australian ballot district. That's when your petition as well as your consent of candidate form is due to the town clerk's office by 5 o'clock. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We know that you will give running for your school board careful consideration. We hope that you will decide to run in 2025. And if you do, we wish you the best of luck in the election. So I just want to say good night to everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.